All right, everybody, I'm getting the high sign. Let's get started. You know that clock's a little fast, right? So I'm not late. See, a little fast. Just what I said. 1 minute. So welcome, everybody. Good to see a few more people here than last week. It was a snowy, nasty Tuesday last week, but many of you were online, so that was good. Glad to see you again online. Uh, we are still plugging through John, and before we get to that, I just wanted to give you a reminder about our Faith for Generations 75th anniversary worship celebration on the 18th at 10 o'clock at the Lawrence Memorial Chapel. So make plans, save the date, whatever you need to do. Remember, there's just one service that day at all of our sites, just one service then. And we know, did you hear we have a shuttle? So now there'll be a pickup at the Paper Valley which will shuttle you to Lawrence, and then after the worship service, it will shuttle you back to the Paper Valley. So you can either take the shuttle or you can park by Lawrence, whatever works best for you, at 10 o'clock, and then our lunch celebration at the Hilton Paper Valleys at 11:30. You know, at that service at 10, we'll also receive our commitments for our 75th anniversary campaign. And then the good news is they're going to count all of those commitments up, and at the celebration, we'll get to hear the announcement of what God's people have committed towards our $2.5 million goal. So that's going to be exciting, just to get ready for that and see what that's all going to be. So mark the calendar, save the date. Also, if you have not made your reservation for lunch, please do so ASAP, because we need you to reserve. This is not like normal things at Faith where you can just show up and eat. You need to make a reservation. So make sure if you're coming, you make a reservation for that so we know. Maybe you've heard also, it's pretty expensive, the meals there at the Hilton. So we were able to fund 50% of the meal so that the price is a lot better for all of you. It's only $10 for a meal, and a kid's meal is only $5. So hope you feel that's reasonable. We wanted to not let money be a reason to not show up for that. So make your reservation, get your money ready, and let's celebrate, shall we? All right, all that being said, we are on John chapter 9 tonight. We get to talk about this man who was born blind, and just the interactions that he had with the disciples, with his parents, with the Pharisees, with the crowd. There's just so much to learn about how we can see spiritually how God is at work in our lives. So we'll have fun working through an entire chapter tonight. That's the goal. I think we can do it. So let's pray and make sure that we're all prayed up and ready for it. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, God, thank you so very much for this night and a great chance again to be together, whether we're here in person or online, to be around your word. It's so amazing how you teach us and how you fill us, and how it seems every night, every Tuesday we gather together, and there's just some great new truth that you have for us, God, and some new understanding and some new fuel that we get for life and the living of it. So pray again tonight you would open us up to receive the Holy Spirit and the Word, that it might do its work and give us all that we need to grow and to love and to know you and make you known in our world. So bless us now and be with us as we study, learn, and grow together in your name. Amen. All right, my friends, as I always do, let's read this together first. I always say it's fun just to hear it in its entirety before we kind of pick it apart verse by verse. And so we're going to look at John chapter 9. I'm reading from the NIV text if you are wondering. You can follow along or just sit back and listen to the Word of God. So, as Jesus went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man or his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. As long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. "Go," he told him, "wash in the pool of Siloam." This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, "Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Some claimed that he was. Others said, "No, he only looks like him." But he himself insisted, "I am the man." "How then were your eyes opened?" they demanded. He replied, "The man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see." "Where is this man?" they asked him. "I don't know," he said. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. What do you all do now? Oh, See, you're getting good at this. Therefore, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. "He put mud on my eyes," the man replied, "and I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." Others asked, "How can a sinner do such miraculous signs?" So they were divided. Finally, they turned again to the blind man. "What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened." The man replied, "He is a prophet." The Jews did still not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. "Is this your son?" they asked. "Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see?" "Well, we know he's our son," the parents answered, "and we know he was born blind, but how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He's of age. He will speak for himself." Now his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For already the Jews had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Christ would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, "He's of age, ask him." A second time they summoned the man who had been blind. "Give glory to God," they said. "We know this man is a sinner." He replied, "Whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered, I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" Dig, dig. Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes? We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly man who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he, sir?" the man asked. "Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you." Then the man said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say that and asked, "What? Are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains." And this is the gospel of the Lord. This is such a great chapter. Maybe my favorite. John chapter 9 cracks me up. I mean, I don't know if you could hear the humor in this chapter. You know, the sarcasm in this chapter. Everyone in this chapter is blind. The disciples are blind. They don't get it. The man's parents are blind. They're paralyzed by fear. The crowd is blind. The Pharisees are blind. In fact, the only person that can see in this chapter is the man who was born blind. Right? You got to think that as John was writing this, retelling this story, that he had to be chuckling a little bit to himself. You know? Like this man who finally had enough of being, slammed by the Pharisees. He gets a little lippy with him, doesn't he? Like, oh, why do you care so much? Do you want to be his disciple too? That was just a slap in their face, right? There's just good humor in this chapter. But behind the humor, behind the irony, behind the blindness, there's also some really great lessons, right? The purpose of this miracle is to show us how God can enable us to see spiritually. As I'm looking at this chapter, there's this theme in the whole thing. Can you just hear it underneath it all is this? Can you see who Jesus really is? Can you see what Jesus is up to and what Jesus is doing? Can you see what's happening in the one who is standing here in front of you and who he really is? Or are you blind to who he is and what he's trying to do and accomplish for you in your life? Underneath it all is this whole concept, this idea of how we can see who God is, and see how he's working in our world and in our lives. So that's the million-dollar question tonight. As we're walking through this, you need to hear John asking, can you see? Do you understand? Can you see what God's doing in your life? So we're going to see we're going to learn and see as we walk through this chapter, right? As I look at the teachings, it seems to me that there are 4 things that show us what keeps us from seeing. There are 4 things that block us from being able to open our eyes and see who Jesus is and what he's doing. And I think we'll learn that there are 4 things that will help us to open our eyes and see and understand who he is. 4 and 4. Now, if you were looking at your homework and you were working through your pages at all, it might look like I've lost my mind in the numbering. Did you notice the numbering is all off? Like, we're going to look at 4 things and 4 things, but not all 4 in order. So, look at the first one. What keeps us from seeing, the first thing that keeps us from seeing is followed by another number 1, which is what enables us to see. And then we go flipping back again to the number 2 thing of what keeps us from seeing, right? So look, really, the numbers are right, but they're just not all in the right order. So if you're wondering, what in the world was he thinking when he did this, right? You're going to see that there's 4 things that keep us from seeing and 4 things that help us to see, but maybe not in the order you would expect. We're going to look at the order that happens in John 9. You all good with that? See, this is the mind of Dan, and if you can understand that, you are a genius. All right, so we'll look at these things together. So let's start. What is it that keeps us from seeing spiritually? What's the first thing that keeps us in our blindness? Well, it's either or thinking. This either or thinking. Right? Remember how this starts off? They're walking along, and they see this man who is begging, who his whole life has been blind because he was born blind. And they stop, and the disciples ask Jesus, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Now, do you hear the either-or statement in this? They've already got it in their mind that there's 2 possible answers to this, and only 2 possible answers. And what we're going to learn here in just a second is that when we set the box of our understanding, when we give God an either or, Lord, I'm in this situation, and either this is going to happen or this is going to happen. God, I need you to act, and here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like for you to do either this or that. That almost every time that we try and box up God into our little either or situations, we'll find that we can't see what God is really up to. Here's what I mean. Let's follow this through. First of all, this question, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Did your mind just go, wait a minute? If he was born blind, How could he have sinned in order to become blind? Well, the only way that's possible is if he sinned when he was in the womb, before he was born, right? Well, did you know that the Jewish folks, the Jewish rabbis taught that a child could actually commit sins in the womb, right? And so it was possible for them to believe that a child could be born with some disability because they had already sinned while they were in the womb, right? So that's one option. The other was that his parents had sinned and he was suffering for their sin. Well, I thought it was really something that when they're walking by, they see this man who was born blind, who was begging on the streets, who had nothing, obviously. And the disciples treat it as a case study. Isn't that what they're doing? They just see this guy and they go, oh, let's have a theological discussion right now. Right? God, let's talk about the question that's burning in many people's minds. Why was this man born blind? Surely he must have done something wrong, or maybe his parents have done something wrong. What do you say, teacher? Meanwhile, here's this poor guy, right? Sitting there, blind, listening to every word that they're talking about. And can you hear there's no compassion? There's no care. You know, it's not like they see him and they want to help him or do something to make his life better or share a good word or to put a penny in his pot. No, they just see him as a case study. Compare that with what Jesus does. He stops and he helps the man. He stops and he notices his suffering. He notices his pain and his hurt. Such a contrast. Again, one who sees and a group of people that don't see. So, you might think we're in a church of a lot of people, and you might wonder, we're in a world with a lot of people. Does God see me? Does God notice my hurt, my anxiety, my fear, my worries? Does he know what I'm going through? Well, just look at this story, right? The disciples might want to make you a case study. They might want to talk about why you are where you are and what you've done to deserve where you are, and why doesn't God do something about your situation and turn it into a big theological debate. But that's not the way God rolls. That's not the way God treats you, right? To him, you're not a case study. To him, you're a child whom he loves, who has needs, who's hurting, and he notices, and he sees, and he does something about it. Already you can see the difference between someone who sees the purpose of God in the world and the disciples that don't, right? So I just take great comfort in the idea, first of all, that Jesus responds. Second, talking about this either or thing, what keeps them from seeing is this thinking that it's got to be one or the other. Again, I think we do this all the time. Well, I do anyway. Do you ever just kind of like box up God? Do you know what I mean when I say box up God? You say, God, here's what I think you should do. Here's the way, if I were God, what I would do. So, God, you should probably do that too. And every time we do that, we're trying to box up the one who can't be boxed. We're actually limiting God's options and God's power and God's ability based on our own idea of what's right or wrong or what we think we need or don't need. Do you understand that? Right? Do you know what I mean? Right? So anytime we box up God, we're blind to who he is and what he can really do and what he can really accomplish. And that's why I love Jesus' answer. He literally says the word neither, doesn't he? They say, who is it that sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus goes, neither. You guys got to get out of the box. You guys need to open up a little bit and understand that you can't box me up. There's a whole nother reason. There's a whole nother purpose that's at work here. Right? Do you see how either or, boxing up God, will always blind us? So Jesus says, neither this man or his parents sinned, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. right? Isn't that one of those moments? There is so much. Sometimes God lets us limp a little bit through life so that we will have a moment of understanding, so that we will have a moment of revelation, so that we'll have a moment when things make sense. So we'll have one of these incredible growth moments when we really understand who He is and we really get who He is and it really makes sense. And we say, now I know why I had to go through all of that. Now I understand why, God, you didn't do it back then, but you did it now. Those moments, those aha God moments, in His eyes, I think are precious. I think God loves it when we have those moments, those goosebump moments. Have you had those goosebump moments? You know, when things click, when something in your mind goes, oh yeah, now I see. See the words, they just come right out. Now I see. Now I get it, God. I'm not blind anymore. Now I understand. You're working outside of my box. You had a plan that was so much greater than mine. You had ways that you were going to work through that I could never see or never understand. God, please don't ever let me box you up again. Never, God, let me put you into an either-or situation. Instead, let me see. Oh, isn't this good stuff? We need to see God's third option, or fourth, or fifth, or whatever it is, right? That's the plan. That's how we're going to get past the either-or thinking, to let God be God and to open ourselves up to the possibility that He might be working in ways and in a time that we just don't get at the moment. But we trust that we will, sooner or later, understand, right? Is this good stuff, everybody? Right? Go ahead. Wait, I got it right here.
The other day I was at McDonald's and there was a young girl, very pretty young girl, about 12 years old, and she was making noises, going back like this and making noises. The mother was getting the food. Then the mother came over and she continued to make noise and eating her French fries. And I said, God, can't you cure her? Then I started thinking like, well, He has a plan. You know, I'm not going to tell Him what to do. He's going to do whatever. He's got His own reasons why that girl is like that. And it's not my plan to tell Him what to do.
Maybe she's not the one who needed to be cured, but it was you.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that the truth? I mean, sometimes we love to judge. We like to think we know how to have all the answers of what's right and how things should work. God's so much bigger than that. Yep. And so, do you see how either or thinking limits us and blinds us to how God is alive and at work? Right? So let's open ourselves to that third option. Okay, now we're jumping to what keeps us from seeing. See, last one was what helps us to see. Now the next lesson comes, wait, I'm still there yet. I'm a whole slide ahead of myself, so hold on that thought. So here's the story, the third option. Why is it that Jesus is going to do this miracle? It's not to show off His power, right? That's not why He's going to do it. It's not to show up His enemies. That's not why He's going to heal this man. But it's to show His love and His character. That's what this miracle allowed everyone around to see. Everyone who was there, and the disciples themselves, they must have been saying to themselves that night, oh, we're so stupid. I'm sure we wanted to have a debate about this man. We wanted to turn him into a case study, and we just totally ignored his need. Oh, why was I like that? You know? Jesus sees. He knows what was really important. And then the whole thing was so that they could see what it's all about. It's not about why is this person like that? But the real question is, how can I love that person? And how can I show the character of Christ through me as I care for that person? Do you see? Maybe you needed to give her some ice cream with her French fries. I mean, who knows? But you see, that's the question. Not why is that person like that or why did this happen, but how can I love that person and let the character of Christ move through me? That's what Jesus was up to. That's what he said. This is all done so that the work of God could be displayed in his life. And not only that, right? He said this, as long as it's day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. But while I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. You know, putting this phrase into the context of what's going on there, it's like this. Jesus works this miracle then so that now, 2,000 years later, you and I can see the love and the character of Jesus. That light of his love and his character can shine not just to the folks there, but that light can shine to the generations that follow. Oh, man, I love our Lord. Just so cool. All right, now I'm flipping. What enables us to see spiritually? Right? First, to see, that's the last one was what keeps us from seeing. What enables us to see? Choose to obey. Obedience opens up our eyes to see God's plan at work in the world. Obedience. Do you know that's a dirty word today? Obedience? People do not like to be told what to do they? Man, if you just want to get people get their dander up, just tell them that they're wrong about something, right? Tell them that they're not behaving correctly, right? Tell them that there's a rule that they're not following, right? It just drives people nowadays. But obedience, obeying God, is what opens our eyes to see his plan at work. And we're going to see in just a second, opens up a realm of miracles. Disobedience, which means walking away from God's plan, walking in our will instead of his will, always moves us into darkness and away from the light. Obedience is the key to opening our eyes. How did that work in our text? Having said this, he then spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, put it on the man's eyes, and said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. Such a simple statement, came home seeing. And yet what a powerful moment that had to be for him, his family, and all who saw, right? He went, washed, and came home seeing. Did you know clay and mud, this whole spitting and making clay and mud thing to us sounds kind of gross? You know, but in that day, there's sort of two things to that. Spit, believe it or not, was thought to be a healing agent. You know, spit was a healing agent. And second, clay and mud, dirt, dust, has always been a symbol of humanity. You know, from dust you are, till dust you return, or I am the clay, Jesus, you know, I'm the clay, St. Paul says, you are the potter. You know, that we're just clay, we're dirt, we're mud. It's a symbol of our humanity. I brought one of my favorite little, I will never forget as long as I live, in 1995 when I was installed here at Faith Lutheran Church. Pastor Brinkman was preaching the installation sermon, and he used the text that we are all clay pots. You know, and God was the potter, you know, and he said the job of a pastor is to help, to be used by God to shape the pots. And then he said, in this church, you need to know we're a bunch of crackpots. And there's a big old chip out of it. So it was like, welcome to Faith Lutheran Church, a church full of crackpots. And that's when I knew I'd fit right in. But, you know, clay, dirt, mud, it's always been something that's shaped. It's something that's, you know, it's a symbol of our weakness. It's a symbol of our humanity, okay? So dirt, mud, spit, Jesus puts that on the man's eyes. And then he says, take your muddy eyes and walk through the streets to the pool named Sent. So I'm wondering, would you have done it? I mean, if you're this guy, who do you know who Jesus is? Obviously, he didn't. We know the rest of the discussion. Some guy shows up, spits in the dirt, makes some mud, and puts it on your eyes and says, walk and go wash. You might say to yourself, this guy's trying to make fun of me. This guy's playing with me. This guy's messing with me. I mean, would you do it? I don't know. But imagine you did. So now you're walking through the street with mud all over your face, and you're like, oh man, do you think any doubts would creep in? Man, I wonder if he really meant it. I wonder if this is legit. Is he just a joker? Is there any possibility that that could be true, that there's healing that will come out of this? The point is, I don't think his obedience was an easy thing. Do you know what I'm saying? It was a journey. It would have been a struggle that would have been filled with obstacles. A blind man walking from the streets to the pool of Siloam. It would have been filled with doubts and wonderings. I think that Jesus did that on purpose, and we're going to see why here in just a second. The journey was a part of the healing, right? Just hold that in the back of your mind for a second. Would you have done it? Well, this guy did. He chose to obey. And so this got me going, right? I got up on a soapbox when I was writing the study on this one. You know, how many times already have we not learned in the Gospel of John that so often God first asks for an ordinary act of obedience, and then he works a miracle? You know, the Bible is full of this concept, but we don't always get this. We think we're just going to pray and God's going to whack us on the head with his magic miracle wand, and all of a sudden, poof, what we ask for will happen. That's not the way God rolls. I mean, just think about some of the great miracles in the Bible. The parting of the Red Sea. Would you say that's a pretty powerful miracle? To split a sea so that hundreds of thousands of people can go through? What had to happen before the sea would split? What did God say to Moses? He said, stand and stretch out your staff. And when Moses stood and obeyed and stretched out his staff, I bet he was thinking to himself, what in the world is this going to do? How is me standing here with my arms up with a stick in my hand going to stop Pharaoh's army from just crushing us? But what happens? He goes, okay, God, I don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know what you're up to. But if you ask me to stand here and hold my hands up with a stick, I'll do it. And he does it, and what happens? The waters split. The Red Sea is parted. What had to happen first? An ordinary, simple act of obedience. Or how about this one? We talked about this in John, the feeding of the 15,000 or the 5,000, right? What had to happen before those fish and loaves were multiplied? Do you remember? The disciples had to take them out of the basket. And as the disciples took them and started spreading them around, as Jesus said, now you go and give this 5 loaves and 2 fish to the people, they had to do an act of obedience. I'm sure they said, you got a knife? Because I got to cut this up in really small pieces, right? But no, they had to have this act of obedience. They had to say, okay, I don't understand. I don't get it. But if you say so, I'll go. And what happens? They feed 15,000 and there's basketfuls of leftovers. Or how about this one? Remember we talked about this, the changing of the water into wine. You remember at the wedding at Cana? What had to happen before the water changed into wine? Do you remember this? As they scooped the water out, it changed into wine. You remember talking about that? Just nod your head. I'll feel good yeah, thank you. Right? So, see, before, Jesus didn't just go poof, and it was wine. But there needed to be this act of obedience first. They scooped. And when they scooped, the miracle happened. I'm sure they're thinking, what? You want me to scoop water out and serve it? The people are going to know it's not wine, Jesus. Right? But if you say so, I will obey. And they obey, and what happens? Jesus' first amazing miracle. How about this one? The walls of Jericho, one of my favorite. Children of Israel are cross over the Jordan River. It's time for the conquest, for God to deliver the promised land. But there's this one very fortified city in their way called Jericho with real tall walls of fortification. And God says, I'm going to deliver the city to you. And here's how it's going to work. You're going to get the orchestra, right? And you're going to march around and around and around, play your little trumpets, sing your little songs, and the walls will come tumbling down. Right. Right? What are the people saying? Really? Is this what we signed up for? Is this the way this is going to work? I'm going to march, we're going to toot some horns, and the walls will come tumbling down. I don't get it. What do? They do it, and the walls come a-tumbling down. Right? What? Before the miracle could happen, there needed to be obedience. Or how about my favorite one of all? Lazarus is dead in the tomb for 4 days. Jesus is going to do one of the greatest miracles ever, raise someone from the dead. But before it could happen, Jesus said to them, you're going to need to roll that stone away. And what did Mary literally say? Bad idea, Jesus, because it's going to stink. He's been in there 4 days, body's decomposing, it's hot here, it's not going to be a good idea. But, Lord, if you say so, I don't understand. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me why we would already roll the stone away when he's been dead 4 days. But if you say so, they roll the stone away and Jesus says, Lazarus, come out. And you know the rest of the story. Do you see? In every one of these things, what's the one common denominator? They had to obey. Obedience opens up our eyes to see the power and the miracles of God. What if any one of those wouldn't have done it? Would the miracle have happened? I don't know. Maybe God would work it another way. I don't know. But the point is, they did it. And because they obeyed, the miracle happened. Some of the greatest miracles in the Bible begin with something ordinary. All right. So what's the lesson for you and me? Is there something you're praying about? Is there something you're asking God to do in your life? You know, maybe what God's saying to you is, you need to do something ordinary. Before I'm going to restore this relationship, you're going to need to get on the phone and give him a phone call. Before I'm going to bring forgiveness, you're going to have to go and confess to them that you need forgiveness from them. Do you see? Maybe God's going to ask you to do something. Just get off on a limb. Risk something. Challenge yourself in a way that doesn't make any sense. Don't understand what good will ever come from it or how it will ever work. But when we obey, God's power always follows. Right? That's the lesson here. Choose to obey and you will see. Why? Because we say this, when we obey God in doing things that don't make sense, what we're really saying is, God, I'm going to have to depend on you on this one. This is not on me. My intellect says, I know what I'm doing is not enough to make this happen. I know that marching along the wall and blowing a horn is not enough to bring the walls down. God, you're going to have to step in and use this. It takes the dependence off of ourselves and our wisdom and our understanding and places it firmly and squarely in the hands of God. Do you see? Obedience says, God, you're God, I'm not. God, you know better than I do. God, you've got this, I don't. God, the obedience says, I trust that you will work this for good. Do you see, everyone? Obedience opens our eyes to see. So, 2 quick warnings about this idea. All right, don't confuse methods with miracles. Here's what I mean by that. It would have been very easy for the man to say, hey, everybody, I was blind, but now I see. And you know what it was that did it? It was this miracle mud. For $5, I'll give you a little slab of miracle mud so that you too can have a miracle worked in your life. See, that's confusing the method with the miracle. The method isn't what healed the guy. It was the miracle. It was the power of God. I mean, maybe think about it this way. Would it be cool to have a discussion, like all the blind people that Jesus healed would come together and have a little talk? And one guy would say, here's how blindness is cured. Jesus puts a little spit in your eyes, and then you can see people a little bit. They look like trees walking around, but after a while you can clearly see. Another guy goes, no, that's not how it works. You got to have some mud. You put a little mud on there, and then you can see. And then another blind guy says, no, that's not at all. You just listen to the master say, behold, and you can see. Right? Can you see? That would be a foolish argument. Because the method is not where the miracle power is. It's the power of God himself. You know what I'm saying? So we can't get caught up in methods. And we hear these gimmicks all the time in the Christian faith. If you just give, then God will work a miracle. Right? The method is giving. You know, if you'll just pray really hard, if you're really sincere in your prayers, then the miracle will happen. That's mixing that method and miracle. If you'll just read your Bible, if you'll just go to church, then miracles will happen. That's mixing up method and miracle, right? So that's the warning. Don't mix up the method and the miracle. Second, don't mistake your participation for God's power. How silly would it have been if the blind man said, I healed myself. I went and washed. So if you will all just wash like I do, you too will be healed, right? You know, it's not our power. It's not what we do. It's what God does. So we need to be real careful as we just sort of think about this obedience idea. But don't miss, there is something important about obedience in the Christian walk. To let go and let God. To do it God's way, not your way. To trust that his way is always better than yours. And when we do that, we can open our eyes and see how he'll use that to do great things. Good stuff, everybody? Yeah. All right, second, what keeps us from seeing spiritually? Again, another block is doubt. Doubt. Here's the thing. And there's some humor in here, isn't it? Right? His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging his whole life. That was my addition. It's not like this is a new guy in the block, but they knew him. They'd seen him. They'd walk past him every day. They said, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, no, he just looks like him. It can't be him. Do you see what's going on here? It was so impossible for them to believe that the man who was blind all these years, born blind, could now see that their doubt that that could happen was so powerful that they looked right at the guy that they'd seen for years and said, it's not really you. Right? Do you understand how nutty this is? But that's what doubt does. Doubt blinds us to what God is up to and what God is doing. It literally makes us believe foolish things. Right? Doubt, it's powerful. So he himself then says to say to these people who are looking right at him, who have known him his whole life, he needs to say, hello, I'm the guy. I am that man. You know? And they replied, well, how? How were your eyes open then? And he said, the man they called Jesus. He made some mud. He put it in my eyes, told me to go to Siloam and wash, and when I washed, I could see. Where is this man? They asked him. And this is great. I don't know. Did you forget I was blind? Did you not hear what I just said? He put mud on me, and then he sent me away to wash. I have no idea where he is. I don't know what he's doing. How am I supposed to know? He's like, duh. Who's blind now is what he's saying, right? So there's good humor in there. So what is it that keeps them from seeing? It's doubt. No one was born blind has ever been healed, they said. This can't be true. This can't be real. Even the Pharisees later are going to say the same thing. They wouldn't believe that it was really him. Did you catch when they said to the parents, you say he was blind his whole life. What if he was just joking these last 30 years? You know, what if he was just begging on the streets for the last 30 years to pull off this great joke on us? It's this foolish. Doubt will make us believe the most foolish things. Wow. Doubt is powerful. Sometimes we live in the dark because we've convinced ourselves that the light is impossible. I love that sentence. Sometimes we rob ourselves of God's working and power and miracles because we doubt that it can really happen. We doubt, and it stops things from happening. Like this. You might say, there's no way that I can ever be civil to that person again. There's no way that that person who has done this or said this or behaved that way, there's no way that I can ever forgive that person, that we can ever have a relationship again. You know what that is? That's doubt. That's doubting. And your doubt and belief that it can't happen will literally stop it from happening. You follow me? But if you just believe that God can, you believe that God is able to reconcile. He's in the reconciliation business, isn't he? God enables that stuff to happen. You think to yourself, I wonder if God really cares about me. Does he really know me? I'm just one person of a billion little ants crawling around this planet. Does he really listen to my prayers? Does he really understand my pain? Does he really even have time for me? Does he care? You might doubt that God really does. But when you doubt that, you're not understanding who he really is and what he really thinks about you. You're cutting yourself off from God. What about forgiveness? I can never forgive that person. No, with God, you can. What about this? Purpose and significance. You doubt that you can ever matter or that life can ever mean anything. You might say to yourself, man, I've wasted my whole life. There's no good that can come from my life anymore. God says, you just wait and watch what we can do together if you'll stop doubting and believe. Or how about this? $2.5 million for our Faith for Generations campaign? No way can we raise that in this economy. No way will people give that kind of money over and above their regular offerings. It can't happen. And God says, hide and watch. Trust me. You do your part, I'll do my part, and together wait and see what God will do. Right? See, doubt paralyzes us. Doubt literally blocks God from accomplishing things. Let that sink in. Just let that sink in. Doubt blocks God from accomplishing great things in your life and in our world. Wow. We're always filled with doubt when we use questions the wrong way. See, here's the way my mind is working. If you listen, they asked a lot of questions. But their questions, if you were hearing that statement again, they're all they're stalling. They're asking a question so they can argue about it. They're asking a question so that they can get their way or so they can understand it, right? Doubt questions used the wrong way can lead to doubts. There's a right way to question. It's not wrong to question. But if we question with preconceived notions and ideas, if we question in order to wrestle God, to argue with God into getting our way, then it's not going to turn out well, is it? So we need to ask our questions the correct way, not to argue or stall or accuse, but to really understand. All right, number 3. What keeps us from seeing spiritually? Man-made rules. Oh my. Do we really want to go here, Lutherans? Right? They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been born blind. Now, the day on which Jesus made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. They could not accept the news that this blind man could now see because of one fact. It happened on a Sabbath day. Right? They knew this man. They knew he was blind from birth. They knew he had been begging on the streets his whole life. Shows up able to see. What do you think they should have said? What do you wish they would have said? A miracle. God himself has stepped down and done a great thing in this man's life. Praise be to God. But what do we see? Just the opposite. They literally say, this could not be from God, for God would never work on the Sabbath day. God would never break the Sabbath rules or laws. And because they were so stuck in the rules and the laws, they were unable to see the power of the miracle standing right in front of them. The rule blocked God's action in their lives. It stopped them from seeing. Right, everybody? You think I'm making more of this than it's really there? I mean, it literally happened. They could not see who he was, all because it was the Sabbath. Jesus broke the Sabbath rules in their mind in three ways. First, he spit and made mud. You know, if he had spit on a rock, that would have been okay. But he has now created something breaking the Sabbath. Strike one. Strike two, he put mud on the man's eyes. He used a healing agent on the Sabbath day, right? On the Sabbath day, you couldn't drink any Alka-Seltzer, right? On the Sabbath day, you couldn't take some medicine or medication because that was considered work or breaking the rules of the Sabbath. Strike two. Strike three, it worked. The man was healed. And you can't heal on the Sabbath. Strike three, he's out. No way he can be a man of God. No way. The rules stop them from the joy of the Sabbath. I wrote here that people were so afraid of breaking the rules that the Sabbath became a funeral rather than a festival. Can you imagine on the Sabbath day walking around like afraid that you would do something wrong? You know, what if you looked the wrong way? What if you picked up some dirt and made mud? What if you accidentally picked a grain? You know, what if you lifted something that was heavier than 10 pounds? People must have walked around in just fear on the Sabbath day of angering God or angering the Pharisees that were watching, right? They turned what was supposed to be a joyful day of rest and connecting to God and one another into a time of fear and trepidation, and even worse, a day of self-righteousness. Like you go to bed at night and you go, whew, God, I did good today. You owe me. I don't think I broke any rule today, God. That's got to count for something, right? Was that the intent of the Sabbath? Not at all. So can you see how rules, regulations, we've always done it that way before. The 7 deadly words of the church, right? Can you see how that blinds us to God's work in our lives? Yes? Excuse me. The Pharisees couldn't accept Jesus because it would mean having to admit they were wrong. If you can get a Pharisee to admit they're wrong, then you can get a man to do anything. Here's the thought. Your future does not have to justify your past. It's okay to step into God's powerful future if you have to admit that what you've done in the past is wrong. However, it's shocking what we'll live with, what we'll endure just to avoid saying that we're wrong. Right? Can you all just practice with me? Say this, I'm wrong. It just won't come out of your mouth, some of you. Right? I'm wrong. Sometimes we just need to admit we're wrong before God can move to do good, to make right. Do you see what I'm saying? So why should we settle for darkness just because we can't admit we need some light? These poor Pharisees were so caught in not being able to say that they were wrong about the Sabbath that they couldn't see the beautiful thing that Jesus just did for this man. And they saw it as an evil thing. He can see, and they said that's not right. They're blinded to God's goodness and work in their lives. So, my friends, maybe there are 3 little words that you need to say. I was wrong. Maybe you need to say these 3 little words so that a flood of light from God will come into your life and into your world. Maybe that's what you need to open your eyes and see. We learning anything today? 4, what keeps us from seeing spiritually? The next one, fear. They bring the man to his parents. Is this your son? Is this the one who was born blind? How is it that he can now see? See, they've put them in a terrible position. And do you think it was an accident that the Pharisees did this? These connivers, they're strategizers. They're always planning to make them look good and make those they don't think are worthy look bad. They set them up. Is this your son who was born blind? And how is it now that he can see? What's their answer? They did well. We know that he's our son, the parents answered, and we know that he was born blind. But how he can see or who opened his eyes, we don't know. He's of age. You go ask him. Don't come on me. I don't want to get in the middle of this. Don't come at me with this, right? You go ask him. He's of age. That means he's over 30. He's of age. You can go talk to him and let him answer that question. We're going to plead the fifth. Do you hear it? And then we hear why. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. Because already the Jews had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Christ, you all Bible scholars know what Christ means, the Messiah, the anointed one, the chosen one, the Son of God, that they would be put out of the synagogue. So, because they were afraid of getting put out of the synagogue, they refused to bring glory to Christ. They refused to see what God was doing. Their fear blinded them to seeing what God was working in their son's life. Again, what should they have been saying? What do we wish they would have said? Holy cow, this is my boy. And he can see. What a miracle. Praise be to God. That's what we hope they would say. But because of their fear, they're hiding and they're cowering and they're refusing to acknowledge who Jesus was and what he did to their son. This fear. So let's just talk about what we're afraid of. It's a big deal. You get put out of the synagogue, you just go down to Trinity next door. Right? No, not in those days. To get put out of the synagogue meant, number one, you lost your Social Security. You lost your welfare. Because the whole system of caring for the elderly was all wrapped up in the Jewish synagogue system, in the Jewish church. So if you were put out of the synagogue, that means when you were old, you didn't have anyone to care for you or take care of you. You had no welfare. There was no Social Security. You lost your ability to be cared for in your old age. Second, you lose your business opportunities. They had connections. They worked together. They did business together. Right? You lost that if you were put out of the synagogue. You were anathema. You weren't allowed to sell or trade with the Jewish people anymore. You were out. Third, you lost fellowship with God's people. You know, your family, your friends would shun you. They would publicly shame you and humiliate you. It was really the word we would use today as this word excommunicated. Right? They were to be put out of the synagogue means you are excommunicated. You are anathema, right? There's a ban on your life. So I can see why they were afraid. Can you? Yeah. I'm saying that's a legitimate fear. So here's my question. How is it that we face legitimate fears? The answer is to be willing to lose it all for the sake of Christ. There's an understanding here for people who can see that people who can't see don't have. And the understanding is, what is this? If I were to gain the whole world, said Jesus, but forfeit my soul, what did he say? What good is that? Right? People who see understand that there's nothing we can lose here that will ever compare to the riches that wait for us in heaven one day. St. Paul said, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Do you understand that concept? This is someone who understands that to be put out of the synagogue is trivial and small compared to be put out of the kingdom of God, to be put out of eternity in heaven. It's not a trade that's worth making. And so once you see this and once you understand this, once you get that God is with you no matter what, and there's nothing that can separate you from his love, it doesn't hurt if you lose things. It doesn't hurt if you get put out of the synagogue. It doesn't hurt if you are persecuted for believing in Jesus Christ. It doesn't hurt if you're called old-fashioned or if you're called intolerant. If you're standing up for Christ, you say, it's worth it. It's worth it because to me to live is Christ. And everything else is worthless. Jesus put it this way. He said, take up your cross and follow me. Right? That means life isn't going to be a picnic. It means you're going to lose things. But the value and the gain in that, the gain of following Christ is worth it all. People who see get this. People who are blind don't. People who see are free. People who are blind cling and hold to the things of this world. People who see welcome death. People who don't see are afraid and fearful of death. Do you see the difference? Right? So fear of losing, fear of not having things can blind us to God's work and truth in our lives. Agreed, anyone? Wow. So now we're done with the four things that keep us from fear, from seeing. Now we're going to go to the second, third, and fourth thing that helps us to see. Right? Moving on through the Gospel of John 9. So they bring him in, and they have this interesting phrase. Give glory to God, they say. We know this man is a sinner. Do you know what's going on right here? That's a phrase. In fact, if you have a little footnote in your Bible, I bet it says something about that there. That little phrase, give glory to God. Do you know what that really means? It means, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? That's what that little phrase is. What they were asking him to do there with that phrase is to raise his right hand and say, I swear on a stack of Bibles that this man is a sinner. Right? That's what this give glory to God phrase is all about. It's an oath. It's a swear on your honor. It's a swear to God thing, which we're told not to do, by the way. Right? It's a swear, but they did it anyway, by the way. It's a swear to God thing that this man is a sinner. Raise your right hand and call Jesus a sinner, they say. And what's his response? I can't do that. Whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. But one thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. That is the best answer that's ever been given in the Bible. You know, who's Jesus? Would you prove to me that he is a sinner or that he's God? Would you be able to tell me the truth about that? You might hear that. People might ask you that. How do you know he's God? Why do you believe that? And all you need to say is, I don't know. All I know is that I was blind, but now I see. All I know is that I was hopeless, but now I have hope. All I know is I lived life in fear, but now I live with joy. I don't know if he's God. I don't know how to explain the Trinity. I don't know how to understand the incarnation, but I do know that I was blind, but now I see. I didn't get it, but now I do. Now I'm full and I'm free. That's all you need to say. Sometimes we bung up this whole idea of evangelism and sharing the faith, that we've got to have all the right answers. We've got to know to be able to prove. We've got to be able to quote Bible verses. No, you don't. This guy didn't quote a single verse. I'd love the answer. He's like, I don't know whether he's a sinner or not. All I know is that I was blind and now I see. So my point in this is that fact trumps argument anytime. Facts trump theology and doctrine anytime. Fact, I was blind but now I see. Fact, I'm in love with the Lord. Fact, he has changed my life. Fact, I will never be the same again. Fact, that wins every argument about who he is or what he's done. And that's all you got to share. Share what he has done. So, you know, you've got that silly box there in your page where there's these 5 things. Once I was something, but now I'm something. I would love for you just to find some time tonight when you get home and just ask, what were you before you had this relationship with the Lord? What were you before? Where were you blind? What was your weak spot? What was your fear? What was your anxiety? What was your pain? What was holding you back from seeing? Name it. I once was a stubborn fool, but now I can admit I'm wrong. Do you see? I once was blind, but now because of Jesus, I see. Once I didn't get it, right? Once I thought life was about getting things. Now I know it's about giving away. Do you see it? Figure it out. Pray about it. Write it down. And just acknowledge that, like that man, now you were once blind, but now you see. Good stuff? Right? I hope it's helpful. So see Jesus in your circumstances. Third, what enables us to see spiritually? We need to trust Jesus with our life, we're going to see that there's two parts of trust that really make something trusting, right? Two parts. First, there's enlightenment. Trust is based on knowledge. You do you? You don't trust someone without some enlightenment about who they are or why you might believe that they're trustworthy. So the first part of trust is this enlightenment. And just look at the journey this guy went on in John chapter 9. In John chapter 9:11, he says, when they asked him who did this, he says, it's the man that they call Jesus. That's where he starts. And then the enlightenment, the discussions, meeting Jesus and the talks that follow. The second thing in verse 17, they say, who is he? And now he doesn't say, oh, he's some man. Now he says he's a prophet. Do you see the difference between a man and a prophet? Right? He's moved. There's a trust there. And then last in 9:38, now he's not just a man, now he's not just a prophet, but now he acknowledges who Jesus really is. He calls him Lord, right? Lord, Master, my God, I believe, and then he worshiped him. So can you see the journey of trust? Can you see the journey that this man went on of knowing Jesus, understanding who he is and what he has done for him? You see it? Right? So the first part of trust is an enlightenment and understanding. And then second is this word commitment. And commitment is an expression of personal belief. It's not good enough just to know that Jesus is God. Even the demons know that Jesus is God, right? Even the demons say, Jesus of Nazareth, we know who you are, the Holy One of God. Even they know, but they're not believers, are they? Because knowing isn't enough. There has to be follow-up. There has to be a commitment, a life change that comes after. There needs to be a giving of oneself to the Lord. And that's exactly what he does. He says, the Lord, I believe, and then what does he do? He worships him. Do you see? Now he has taken the full step of trust. He has given himself fully in worship to the Lord, his Savior, and his God. So trust in Jesus. And when we open up our eyes, when we begin to trust him and we commit to him, that's when he leads us in the paths that we should go. Make sense, everybody? Yes? All right, fourth, what is it enables us to see spiritually? It's this word, humility. Pride will quickly block God's action in our lives. Humility is just the other. So again, we have this little discussion with the Pharisees again. Jesus said, for judgment I've come into this world, so that the blind will see and those who see will become blind. Do you hear in there what he's saying? Those who are proud and refuse to see are the ones who are blind. Those who are weak, those who are humble, those who are needy, those are the ones who will see. Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this, and they said, what? Are you lecturing us? Who do you think you are? What? Are we blind too? Are you saying that we're blind? And Jesus is like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim to see, your guilt remains. Do you hear the words? Now that you think you can see, now that you think you've got it figured out, the more you think you do, the less you really do. The more you think you can see, the more blind you really are. It's not until you let go, until you give up thinking that you're worthy or that you've got it figured out or that you understand. It's not until you hit rock bottom on your knees and you cry out, God, help me, a sinner. It's not until that moment that you will see who he really, really is. Until that happens, you're blind. This is why I love our worship. Lutheran worship is beautiful. It always begins with an acknowledgement of our helplessness. It always begins with this acknowledging our blindness. What do we call that in worship? Confession. We begin our worship with confession. We come with nothing. We come as beggars, and we plead with God for love and mercy. And when that happens, then comes the rest of worship, the God gifts. After we confess comes the absolution. By the power of Jesus Christ, you are forgiven. After the confession, we hear the word of God. The gift of God's word is given. After confession, we come forward and receive the sacrament of the Lord's Supper, the body and blood of Christ. After, we humble ourselves. It never comes the other way around. Have you ever been to a worship service at Faith Lutheran Church where confession was the last thing we did? I promise it'll never happen. That's just not the way it works. Because humility unlocks, opens our eyes to see God's power at work in our lives and in our world. Amen? Right? Humility. So the people who think they can see, they're the ones who can't. The people who can admit what they can't see are the ones who are going to end up seeing. Flipsy, topsy, turvy. Surprised that that's the way God rolls? It seems he does that a lot with us, doesn't he? Right? Humility opens up our eyes to see. Wow, did we learn anything today? Isn't this a powerful lesson about how we see, how we come to God, how God works through the ordinary acts of obedience to do miracles and to unlock his power and strength in our lives? We have to admit that we're spiritually blind before we can spiritually see. All right, next week, where the grass is really greener. That's what we're going to talk about. These two great I am statements of Jesus. I am the gate for the sheep, and I am the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. You think we'll have any fun in that lesson, y'all? All right, so bring your little lammy ears, your little sheep fleece next week, and we'll see what John has for us. Good stuff, everybody. Go in peace. Stay warm.